Hello and welcome to Proconnotation Points Video Snark. I'm continuing my sarcastic book review of The Mister by E.L. James. Not the first video, go check out the others. Links are posted below. Chapter 5. We're back with Elisa. She returns to Max's apartment and is annoyed that he's still in there, and then tells the reader that she couldn't stop thinking about him since their brief encounter. And I said it with the previous video, and I'll keep saying it until all authors get it into their thick skulls. Nobody likes these kind of insta-love stories, take one look at the person and are just obsessed with them kind of things. She takes note of the mess left in the kitchen as she passes through to the laundry room. It's raining outside and she's soaked, but she has a change of clothes, which she puts on. Max calls to her and she awkwardly goes to him in the kitchen. He doesn't really say anything, only just wanting to say hello. As Max leaves, he mentally chides himself for how awkward that it was. He couldn't get her out from his mind, but the second that she shows up again, he's weird and makes the entire thing awkward. He notices wet footprints on the tile and thinks about how Elisa must have walked through the rain to get there. He also thinks about what he's been doing the past week and how he's been ignoring everything and only just composing, which is probably a lot healthier than hooking up with a different woman every night, but only just barely. Max then gets distracted watching as Elisa walks by. Despite the fact that we spent an unholy amount of time describing how Elisa changed into dry jeans and put on a housecoat, the narration will not shut up about her pink underwear. Max describes them as being large, and I think that either James means to write granny panties or bloomers, but either way, the sight of it turns Max on. Elisa goes into the bedroom and is surprised to see that Max has picked up after himself a little. Like, not actually tried to take care of himself, but went from 0 effort to like 1% effort. She stares at the window and thinks about things for an entire paragraph. She also thinks about how calming that she finds Max's presence. And then she actually starts to clean. And after verifying that there's no icky used happy fun time anti-baby objects in the trash, Elisa then stares at the artistic nudes hanging on the wall for like a super long time. If this is not going to be plot relevant, I literally do not care. We switch once again back to Max because the story is suffering from plot ADHD. He thinks about how much Kit gave up when their father died. He'd been studying something dumb at university, but after inheriting the title, he suddenly started learning agriculture and stuff. Which I've got to give James some props that she's not just writing about the lords and ladies throwing Pride and Prejudice style parties every night, that people with titles actually are working, and she's showing that it's not nearly half as glamorous as everybody thinks it is. Elisa is cleaning up the kitchen when Max starts to play the piano. Curious, she goes to watch him, and as she does, her mind starts to drift towards the things that happened to her. But we're on chapter 5 of 33. We can't have her backstory just yet. Don't be silly. She interrupts him and asks to clean, I guess the piano? The writing is super unclear about it. Max pulls back to give her room to clean. He pretends to read some report, but he's actually just checking her out and getting himself worked up whenever he sees her stupid pink underwear. He also has a weirdly random moment of panic when he sees her reading his sheet music and wonders if she can actually read music or not. Max leaves the room to make a phone call, and Elisa feels relieved over not being watched so closely. She reasons with herself that he was watching her because he wanted to make sure that she was doing a good job cleaning. She goes to get the vacuum, which the book will not shut up about how it's named Henry. Are we just naming our household appliances now? I have a broom named Samantha, if that's the case. As she's finishing up with that, Max says that he has to go and can she lock up the house on her own. After she says yes, he loans her an umbrella since it's still raining heavily outside. Pleased to be finally alone, Elisa sits down and starts to play the piano. As Max leaves, he can't stop thinking about how Elisa had thanked him for the umbrella. We mercifully skip over the actual meeting, but they're still talking about hiring an interior designer. Max randomly throws out Caroline's name, but the man, Oliver, balks over the idea of hiring her, which is probably going to be important later, but we'll see. Back at home, Max looks at the piano and thinks about how Elisa cleaned it earlier, of how randomly turned on he was about the entire thing, which even he admits is weird because she's not his usual style. And can we not? He thinks about going to the club to find a new woman, but he just plays the piano instead. Back at her own residence, Elisa can't stop thinking about Max. She has solo fun times, which is honestly just kind of weird and out of nowhere. At the same time, Max wakes up from a dream featuring Elisa and also has solo fun times. And I'm expecting the Norn Horn Dog to react to something like that, but for Elisa, it just seems really out of character. And for some unholy reason, this chapter still isn't over. Literally nothing is happening except constant POV switching that is driving me insane. But sure, let's keep going. We jump over to Max working. He's in the same office as his kid, although not in Kit's personal space just yet. He feels weird over the entire thing because he thinks that at any second his brother will come in or he'll hear Kit saying something on the phone from the next room. The book spends an unholy amount of time describing the estate, and I literally do not even care. But Oliver asks about the staff that Max will need, and the only thing he can think about is Elisa. Caroline texts to say that she wasn't pregnant and Max feels bad, mainly because he will have to continue to do all of this. He doesn't seem to care at all about Caroline much beyond that, but he does offer to take her out to get drunk, which, so much for those healthy coping mechanisms that didn't even last an entire chapter. They meet up at some club where they make painfully awkward small talk before Caroline brings up the idea of Max having moved on from her. Because it's been like 2 pages since Max last obsessed about Elisa, and he might have forgotten about her. When Max says that the girl he likes doesn't notice him, Caroline thinks that it's a pretty weird thing for him to say, especially since he's the kind of guy who finds himself with a new girl every single night. Later, the two of them go back to Max's flat because he didn't want to go home if Kit wasn't going to be there. They're both drunk as pigs, but Caroline asks if Max has any drugs, and then when he refuses, asks about drinking some more. He finally decides that he has to put his foot down and end whatever is going between him and Caroline, even though he is surprised by this and thinks that a drunk woman has never stopped him before. He puts Caroline to bed, and she later comes into his bed and cries against him for a while. With that, the chapter finally ends. Chapter 6. Following the endless Chapter 5, I looked ahead to see how many pages in this chapter that there were. 18. And there's more of this POV switching in the middle. Ugh, I haven't even started reading this and I hate it already. Elisa goes back to Max's apartment to clean it and is excited when she realizes that he's still in for the day. However, the excitement quickly dies when she finds some woman standing in the kitchen, seemingly wearing Max's shirt and only his shirt. She can still admire him from afar as she's done since she saw him naked on his bed. There's nothing stopping her from doing that. So she saw the guy naked once and is instantly obsessed over him? Don't show this girl any of those adult websites or else she might become obsessed with those adult workers too. Also, this behavior sounds like super amazingly healthy. And then I'm not even quite sure what's happening here. I think that it's poetry, but with zero context. I'm super lost. Help. We switch over to Max as Caroline tries to get him up. She complains that there's no food and that they should go out to breakfast. Max has no desire to get up until Caroline offhandedly mentions the new cleaning lady, and then that gets his attention. The two of them continue to bicker about Max putting Caroline off romantically. Eventually, he puts his foot down and says that he's her friend and brother-in-law, and that's it. Max showers and goes to find Elisa. He feels some desire to explain that Caroline is his sister-in-law with the implication that they are nothing more, despite the fact that they were making the beast with 2 backs in the start of the book. Caroline comes in and Max introduces the two of them. Caroline asks where the name Elisa comes from, and Elisa explains that it's Italian, but she herself is from Albania. After they leave, Elisa puzzles over the idea of one's sister-in-law wearing your shirt first thing in the morning. She eventually chalks the entire thing up to people in the West are weird. She's even more cheered up when she finds no used Fun Times anti-baby devices in Max's trash can. As Caroline and Max go to breakfast, Caroline asks Max if Max's mystery girl is Elisa. He denies this and then instantly changes the subject. He asks if Mrs. So-and-so was the one who arranged for the cleaning lady and says that it's weird that the old one up and quit so suddenly. Where does she live? Does she travel far each morning? Does she live alone? I could follow her home. Stalker. Well, at least he can admit that behavior like this isn't okay. I'm not saying that this makes the book better than 50 Shades series. Not being a stalker is a bare minimum of decent behavior, and I think that we shouldn't applaud things like that. Max sits and continues to think about how much he wants Elisa. Caroline then randomly says that because Elisa seems to be terrified of Max, it must mean she's secretly in love with him. And the readers know that this is the case, but I'm just baffled as to how Caroline decided this after a 2-second interaction with the girl. Max offers up a counter-argument, because she works for me, and I'm her boss. When Max goes back home, he hears music coming through the front door. He's baffled and wondered if Elisa turned on some music, but as he goes inside, he realizes that Elisa is playing the piano and seemingly much better at it than he is. He stands in the hall, just out of her line of sight, and listens as she finishes one piece and then immediately launches into another, but her playing is interrupted by the doorbell ringing. Max greets Oliver briefly before saying he needs to talk with Elisa before she goes. Elisa is frightened to have been caught playing the piano. Max feels weird about the entire thing and helps her into her coat, which has a name sewn inside the collar. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce it, but it's a man's name, and Max feels jealous that it could be her boyfriend. Elisa says that she won't play the piano anymore, but Max is quick to tell her that she can play the piano whenever she wants. And before I can stop myself, I let my thumb trace her full bottom lip. Ah, yes. Let's just take a young woman who is obviously in a bad financial situation to the point where she's cleaning houses in another country for a living and harass and assault her. She is not in a position to say no to Max. Max thinks about Caroline's weird idea about Elisa wanting Max. However, Elisa naturally freaks out and runs off. As she's going, Max notes that her trainers are worn thin and he worries about the state of her personal finances if she's wearing threadbare pants and shoes that worn. As she leaves, Oliver asks who that was. He tries Max for paying her under the table, stating that she needs to be on some kind of official payroll. As he talks about that, Max worries about the idea that Elisa might not be in the UK legally. Elisa runs to the bus stop and worries about having been caught playing the piano. She worries that it might be the end of her cleaning job with Max. She thinks about how he touched her and how he helped her into her coat before she realized that she left her other shoes at the flat, but she's too embarrassed to go back and get them. She then thinks about her living situation. She lives with a lady named Magda and her son. The son is apparently the owner of the jacket. However, they're going to be moving to Canada soon, and then Elisa will be out on the street. We switch over to Max as he finishes up his meeting with Oliver. Oliver says that Max needs to tour the estate since he's the heir now. Max is just angry over being asked to do this, even if it seems like it's not that big of a deal to me. Oliver also chased Max over the fact that during his last trip to the estate for Kit's funeral, Max got super drunk. Max also fumes over his lot in life, not just about Kit dying, but the way his parents spent all of their time and energy preparing Kit for taking over the title, to the point that they practically ignored Max and Marianne. Oliver eventually convinces Max that they should pack up and go right then. Max is reluctant to leave Elisa, but agrees anyway. And this is a picture of me waiting for the plot to get started and something to happen. Thanks for listening to my book Snark on YouTube. New videos are up every Monday, but stick around because sometimes I drop random videos on other days too. You can like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so that you don't miss a single video. While you're waiting for the next video, you can go check out all my other videos. If you're already caught up with all of my videos, you can go to Tumblr for my main book Snarks, always free and updated every morning. And if you've already read all of my main Snarks, and you can find even more Snarks on my Patreon, you can access it for $1 a month, plus you get early access to my main Tumblr Snark. Special thanks to Dawn, Phoebe, and Nikki for supporting me on Patreon already. If you want to hear your name in my video next week, you either support me on Patreon or make a one-time donation. Do you like my Snarks so much that you want me to snark your writing? I do that too. For just $3 per chapter, I will tell you how awful that your writing is. But not to worry if you feel like you couldn't take the criticism. I also offer regular book editing as well, $3 for every 5,000 words. You can contact me on Tumblr if you have further questions. If you want to read some of the things that I've written, you can purchase my works on Amazon. I have 19 erotic short stories, 1 short story collection, and 1 full-length novel. I also sometimes run flash sales on my stories, and if you don't follow me on any social media, you might want to do so just so you know when I might be offering more things for free. Links for everything will be posted below. See you next week, guys. Which I've got to give it which I've got to give